Alrighty, so we are midway through week 5 of the NFL season. It is a Wednesday, so that means today it is episode 4 of Facts versus Feelings, matchups to exploit and matchups to avoid in week 5. And just so you guys know, we had a pretty great hit rate in week 4, so if you are looking to find the right matchups to exploit and avoid for the running back and wide receiver position, stick around for the end of the video because I will have it all broken down for you nice and pretty. I'm obviously not ever going to be perfect or 100% accurate, but I do feel like looking at these matchups that you're going to want to plug and play players obviously impacts my tiers and rankings, but I do like to highlight these in an actual video each week so you have an idea of who you might want to fade and who you're probably going to want to start depending on matchups. One other thing to note too, and I've said this in the videos previously, so if you've heard this before, I apologize, but I'm going to say it again for people who are new to watching these videos. The running back metrics and the running defense metrics are pretty sticky week over week over week. On the flip side, when it comes to like the wide receiver stats, the passing stats, and then also secondaries and passing defenses, this is something that has historically fluctuated week over week. It really comes down to matchup schemes and how teams are going to take away certain players. So what I'm really trying to look for is secondaries who are kind of depleted with injury or secondaries who are just giving up a lot of passing yards week over week. It is one of those things too where we're looking at that and then also looking at the matchup and trying to predict, is this going to be a higher scoring game? So the first player or players that I'm kind of wanting to fade this week is going to be Kenneth Walker Jr. and Zach Charbonnet. The Seahawks are going up against Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay right now is leading the NFL in yards allowed to the running back position. I'm not just talking about fantasy points because fantasy points, again, like the passing side of things, can vary week over week. It's really touchdown dependent. I am looking at the actual underlying metrics of how defenses are actually playing against running backs, not including touchdowns. So when it comes to that this week for Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet, it's not looking too great against Tampa Bay. It might not be the most high scoring of games either, just because both of these defenses are pretty good for both Tampa Bay and Seattle holistically. So for me personally, I'm kind of wanting to fade Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet if I have better options this week. On the flip side of that exact same matchup, Seattle at this point in time is number 2 in yards allowed to running backs. Bucky Irving is probably not going to play, so that's like a little bit of news for y'all if you haven't already heard that yet. I do think that means it's going to be Rachaad White as the lead back. Rachaad White will probably not be able to get it going on the ground. The majority of his usage will have to come through the air, but because it's not a super high scoring game, he probably won't get a bajillion targets. It's not my favorite thing. I know people are out there saying, pick up Rachaad White, you got to start him. I would rather just not start Rachaad White based on the matchup and wait and see what ends up happening. Also, even if you pick up Rachaad and you start him and he does okay at best, you're only probably going to get him for the 1 week until Bucky comes back in week 6. So another matchup that I'm not super excited about starting the running back is Jordan Mason. The Vikings are going up against the Browns. Browns are top 5 pretty much in all the defensive categories minus scoring. They're letting you score the football, but a lot of that's on special teams, interceptions, pick sixes, that kind of stuff. So it's a lot of turnover dependent and special teams dependent scores. The Browns defense is pretty dang good. I do not like this offense for the Vikings right now. It looks like it is trying to get better under Carson Wentz, but we don't really know what we're going to see in week 5. It could be an absolute cluster. It is going to be a game over in Europe, if I'm not mistaken. So if I'm wrong, forgive me, but I believe it's over in England or London or somewhere over there this week. I don't like those overseas matchups either. Jordan Mason could end up being okay, and I mean okay, depending on touchdown equity for this week. The biggest saving grace for Jordan Mason, and so if you're in a tight spot, you might be able to still start him, maybe, depending on how tight of a spot you're actually in, is the fact that it is going to end up being Dylan Gabriel starting for the Browns. I do not think it's going to be a good situation for him going up against this Brian Flores defense. So it could end up being a situation where you are able to actually get away with playing Jordan Mason because of how bad the Browns offense might look, how many turnovers there might be from Dylan Gabriel, and just how inefficient they are at pushing the ball down the field. So with all that being said, I'm not a huge fan of starting Jordan Mason this week. I could be talked into it, but it is a situation where if you have better options to play, and you should because of where he was drafted in our drafts, I would probably put him on my bench this week and look to find a different running back who has a better matchup on the week. Another running back that you're probably not starting anyways, but I'm still going to touch on it, is Chase Brown. The Lions are not letting you run the football very effectively. They're getting after the quarterback. Jake Browning's not looked very good. They're going to have to pass the ball because the Lions are going to score a bajillion points. He's not going to be involved in the run game. There's no touchdown equity on this team for anybody because they're not scoring touchdowns. I'm sure that you're already not starting Chase Brown, but I don't really want to make this super long about Chase Brown because you're not starting Chase Brown. You shouldn't be starting Chase Brown. It's not a good matchup either way, and the only way he gets there is if they end up bringing in another quarterback, it looks like at this point in time. Unless Jake Browning just starts to get it going in week 5. But until then, Chase Brown would start him against the Lions in week 5. So 2 more matchups I want to talk about. And I talked about this in week 4, and it kind of played itself out with Saquon Barkley. He still had touchdown equity on this team, but he did go up against Tampa Bay. They don't let you run the football. He was stymied in the run game. If it wasn't for the touchdown, he really wouldn't have gotten there. So it really comes down to touchdown equity and eliteness of these running backs. First one is the 49ers going up against the LA Rams. The Rams are not letting you run the football very effectively. I've said this for a few weeks in a row now. Christian McCaffrey does not look very good on the ground right now. He's overly involved in the passing game. You're still going to have to start Christian just like you had to start Saquon last week. But I'm telling you right now, if the Rams are smart, their whole plan is we are going to spy Christian McCaffrey out of the backfield. We are going to take him out of this football game. And if that ends up happening and the Rams are able to accomplish this, whether Juwan Jennings or Ricky Pearsall plays, it doesn't matter. It is going to limit this offense for the 49ers and pretty much cripple them as far as I'm concerned. Probably won't happen. Christian's still pretty elite. Just like Saquon last week, you have to just start him because he has so much touchdown equity on this football team. But it is not a matchup I love for him going against the Rams in week 5. So the other running back matchup that I wanted to touch on that you're still starting this guy no matter what, but it is not my favorite matchup this week, is James Cook going up against the New England Patriots run defense. The Patriots are not letting you run the football very effectively through the first 4 weeks. It has been pretty similar on tape to what you're seeing on stats. They're just not letting explosive runs happen. He's still somebody you're going to be starting, but I don't love the matchup. It is one of those things to monitor to see what ends up happening. I don't think it's going to be a 100-and-some yard game for James Cook. Okay, so now we are moving over to matchups to exploit. You have the Panthers going up against the Miami Dolphins. They are giving it up on the ground right now in bunches. They are allowing over 100 yards on the ground to the running back position for the last 3 weeks. It is setting up where Chuba Hubbard should be in a pretty good spot. The Miami Dolphins defense looked a lot better against the Jets in week 4. I think it was a lot more of the game plan. The fact that they got out ahead of the Jets and then they knew what the Jets were going to have to do. They were going to have to pass the ball a lot, and they pretty much were just doubling Garrett Wilson and said, hey, who else can beat us? And the problem is there's really nobody else on the Jets. It should end up being a good game for Chuba Hubbard. If it's higher scoring, he's still involved in the passing game. He has a decent amount of touchdown equity. This is probably one of the better matchups for Chuba Hubbard on the season. I would look to start him in all of my league formats if you do have him. The next fun matchup, and this is fun because it'll be interesting to see what ends up happening, it is the Saints going up against the Giants. The Giants right now are bottom 10 in rush yards allowed to the running back position. Alvin Kamara should be able to eat, and Kendre Miller has a chance to pop off in this game. You're not probably starting Kendre Miller. You're going to be starting Alvin Kamara, but Kendre Miller has a chance to maybe earn some more carries on this team going forward if he's able to produce even a little bit higher than he did against the Bills in week 4. Alvin Kamara should be able to get there on the ground, especially, but also through the air. Hopefully he gets a little bit better quality targets this week as well. I think Alvin Kamara is going to be in a smash spot. The game may not be super high scoring either, just because Jackson Dart's second start. Don't really know what that's going to look like. I do think that Alvin Kamara is going to have a pop-off week in week 5. The next matchup is the Jets going up against the Cowboys. The Jets are giving it up on the ground. They are bottom 5 in running back yards allowed through the past handful of weeks. I do think this is going to be an absolute smash spot for Javonte Williams. If you have him in your leagues, I would feel very, very comfortable about starting him this week. He's looked very explosive. It's kind of crazy. It only took him a handful of years coming off the injury to look good again. I don't know. It's kind of interesting. And with the fact that they're going up against the Jets this week, Javonte Williams should be in a smash spot in week 5. The next matchup to look at is actually the Texans going up against the Ravens. This could be another good Woody Marks game. I don't know. You know that eventually the Ravens are going to get their defense figured out, but right now they're giving it up on the ground. They are bottom 5 in rush yards allowed to the running back position. It could be a good week to start Woody Marks, only because if Lamar Jackson doesn't end up playing, this is going to be a lower scoring game. Cooper Rush is going to be in his first true start with the Ravens, going up against a really good Texans defense. It probably, like I said, won't be high scoring. It'll set it up where they will be able to run the football for the Texans. The Ravens are letting you get it done on the ground. Woody Marks looked pretty great in week 4. If Woody Marks does what he did in week 4, in week 5, he's pretty much locked in as a good like RB2, fringy RB3 guy for you going forward. But if he's not able to get it done against this Ravens defense, then that puts big question marks on Woody Marks' name as far as I'm concerned going forward later into the season. The last matchup that you should absolutely be looking at is Jahmyr Gibbs, Demont going up against the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals are giving it up on the ground. We saw in week 3 what Jahmyr Gibbs and Demont were able to do on the ground against a bad run defense. I truly believe that you are going to see a similar performance out of Gibbs, who you're already starting no matter what. Probably not starting David Montgomery after the week 4 performance, but I told you to fade him in week 4. So if you did that, trust me this week, hop on the train. This is going to be a super horrible game for the Bengals. They can't stop the run. They can't stop the pass. They can't score any points. It is going to set it up to where the Lions are getting out to a huge, nasty lead in this game, which means that David Montgomery is going to get to carry the football against a bad run defense because they're up by so many points. This is one of my favorite matchups for these two players on the season because of how bad the Bengals run defense is, how inept their offense is, how much the Lions are going to be able to score, and it should just be a smash spot where they are able to run the football in the second half and only pass on third downs. It's going to be a smash week for the Lions. I'd be starting Gibbs, obviously. Everybody's starting Gibbs. But if you have David Montgomery, don't worry about what happened in week 4. Think about week 3. You might get somewhere in between those two. I can't promise you it's week 3, almost 30 points. But in week 5, David Montgomery should be set up to smash. Alrighty, so for the passing game side of things and the matchups that I am looking at this week, I do think you're going to end up seeing that the Tennessee Titans going up against the Cardinals is going to be a good game for Trey McBride and Marvin Harrison Jr. It may not be the highest of scoring games, but with no Trey Benson out there, no James Conner out there, the running game probably won't be quite as efficient. If we end up seeing Tennessee able to score some points, maybe, probably not. This week, it could set it up where the Cardinals pass the ball even more. Either way, I would trust the Cardinals this week to be able to get it done through the air. The next matchup that I am looking at to exploit is the Raiders going up against the Colts. Should be a higher scoring game. I know Geno Smith has been turning the football over. At some point in time, that's going to get fixed. The Colts right now are kind of a middling run defense. They're kind of like smack dab in the middle. So Ashton Genty, not the best matchup, not the worst matchup. It should set it up where it could be a higher scoring game because of how lackluster-ish the Raiders are on defense as a whole. The Colts should score points, which means the Raiders have to score points. Geno should have to throw the football. Hopefully, like I said last week, if Geno cannot turn the football over, this is the point in time where Jacoby Myers and Brock Bowers are able to pop off against a not so great Indianapolis Colts pass defense and a defense that is letting you move the ball down the field in chunks through the passing game. Okay, so another matchup to think about, and I kind of like this matchup. It's kind of juicy. It is the Chiefs going up against the Jags. The Jags are not really letting you run the football that effectively. The Chiefs can't run the football very effectively. I'm hoping what we see is a week 4 performance again in week 5. Patrick Mahomes should be able to get the ball to Xavier Worthy, Travis Kelce, Tyquan Thornton possibly. This should be a pretty good week for this Chiefs team. I do think the Jags are going to be able to score the ball against this Chiefs secondary. They're not that great. I don't care what anybody tells you. So when they are scoring, that sets it up where Patrick Mahomes has to, again, throw the football. I just feel like this is a good week for the Chiefs team to score a decent amount of points and for these Chiefs wide receivers to smash in week 5. The next matchup that I am looking to exploit, and this is probably like true, you're probably starting all these wide receivers anyways, but I'm still going to touch on it. The Chargers are going up against the Commanders. The Commanders are giving it up through the air. They're kind of middling at best on the ground game as well. Their defense really just isn't that good. I know that they have Marshawn Lattimore, but on the season, like looking at tape, he looks just like toasted. Like, I don't know what happened to him. If it's injuries, effort, don't care. The Chargers team should be able to put a whooping on Washington. This should set it up where all the pass catchers are able to get home this week for the Chargers. The Commanders are going to be able to score. Jaden Daniels is probably going to be able to play. That should set it up where it's a higher scoring game. Like I said, for these passing games, we're looking for bad passing defenses and potentially high scoring matchups. The Chargers should be able to just absolutely dominate this game through the offensive side of the football. Alrighty, so there are my week 5 matchups to exploit and potentially avoid or fade in week 5. Hopefully this video helps you just a little bit closer to winning your fantasy football championship in 2025. I know the waiver wire has already passed. I am sorry. The waiver wire passed. I already had the video posted yesterday. It is what it is. But if you were in deeper leagues especially, I know at this point in time in the season, it is harder to find quality people on the waiver wire who may be able to be viable for your team in the back half of the season. My last waiver wire video that I will have around here somewhere is a little bit more tailored to deeper leagues, so there potentially could be somebody out there on that video who's still available in your league. You could probably go pick them up for free now that waivers have cleared and stash them on your bench, see how they look in week 5 and in week 6, and hopefully they could be viable players for you in the back half of the season. Also, if you're doing like DST, I'll have that video around here as well. I want to make sure that I'm promoting both of these things that are still viable for you. Maybe you don't really care about the waiver wire at this point in time, but you want to look at DST, or you already have your DST and you want to look at the waiver wire. I'll have those 2 videos around here below. If you feel so inclined to go watch, I would greatly appreciate it. Hopefully I'll see you guys again. No, hopefully you guys will see me again real soon. And until then, y'all have a blessed day. Bye.